and welcome to Epiphytic Cacti. Today I kind of wanted to talk about how I tried to deal with cuttings that I think were probably a little bit difficult. You know, cuttings that I think might not have actually made it otherwise. If I had actually just taken them and put them in the soil, I'm not so sure that they would have survived. This cutting might have survived in the soil, but because he was just looking so sad and depressed, I kind of decided to treat him a little bit differently, especially because he's not that easy to come by necessarily. Let's kind of take a look. So the deal is I got this about a month ago. So I've had it, for about a month. And what I like to do is get this Hydroton. You can get this Hydroton off of Amazon. You can get it from hydroponic stores. What I really like is it's actually expanded clay, so it's porous. So what it actually does is wick water here. So I've got water in the bottom of this, and what happens is this little ball will fill with water, and because he's touching this little ball, that little ball will actually take the water from there and so on, and it will go up. So it's really kind of interesting because it allows a lot of airflow, but at the same time it keeps it, just moist, slightly humid. You can actually see that what I have going on here is that at any given time, this will only have about this much water in the bottom of it. I keep a pretty close eye on it. It sits right by my desk. Once the water goes down, you definitely do not want to let this dry out and then just sit there dried out. Make sure that it always has at least a little bit of water in the bottom of whatever kind of container you put it in. I've actually just found a lot of success with these little dessert glasses. So this works so much better on cuttings that, they're a little bit thinner. They're like tapered at the bottom like this. So it works much better for that. And you can see that there is like a little piece of a cutting here, and then there is like a little branch coming off of it. And so it's taken about 2 weeks, I think, to start like producing its first little root tip in the bottom. I think that people say this a lot, and in my experience of doing this, I have found this to be pretty true. If the roots are coming, forming at the top, they're also forming down below. It is not 100% true, but it's usually fairly true. If we get right in here and we take kind of a closer look, you can see, they're so cute, they're so furry. So a lot of times, like I talk about the little feeder roots, and this is what I'm talking about. They pick up their nutrients from those. A lot of times, like if you unpot a big plant, you'll see that they have like these large main kind of roots that form over time. They can get pretty big. Diameter wise, I mean, like they can, in really old plants, those roots can get very large. But then they always have these little tiny feeder roots that are super easily damaged. So those are the ones, like I said, they get the most damage when you overwater and stuff. So with a cutting, that's really kind of the deal there, is you want to be super careful, because when you see these new roots coming out, you can see how absolutely tiny they are. I mean, look at how tiny they are. This little guy, he's still looking pretty dehydrated, but one of the reasons why I actually decided to do this to this specific cutting was because he was dehydrated. And because the growth was a little on the newer side. New growth cuttings, you have a much more difficult time with those kinds of cuttings. So I kind of like to, if it's something super rare, or if it's just something that means a lot to me in some way, a lot of times I'll kind of try to treat it like this, because I don't have the best track record with rooting new growth cuttings. I don't think most people do. So this is just kind of how I like to treat them. So what's going to happen with this guy is he's just going to stay in here. He's going to keep on producing his roots. I'm going to make sure that he's got his little water reservoir. And it's not a big deal for the roots to be growing down into this water reservoir. The way that they're growing, they're actually choosing to grow down in there. And so as they're growing, they're kind of acclimatizing to the environment that they're in. So as they hit that water reservoir and they keep growing, it becomes a normal environment for them to be in. I do not root cuttings in water. I have never really done that. I've seen it work for some people. I do know that a lot of people root their cuttings in perlite in a similar kind of fashion to this, with success. 99.9% of the time, I take a cutting and I stick it in my normal mix, and then I just walk away and leave it alone. But every once in a while, I get one that I just needs a little bit of extra attention, like this. There are tons and tons of ways to do this. There's no rooting solution in here. There's no kind of nutrients. There's really nothing. That's just straight up water that goes into that reservoir. And he's just going to hang out in here for a while until he plumps back up, and I feel like he is mature enough to be potted up and he'll be okay. That's probably going to take a while. Here is kind of an example of a plant that I had to do this to. Was very, very, very new growth. And I mean like brand new growth. It had not probably been, it was just brand new growth. And this is what the plant looks like today. And so it was this piece. It was smaller than this though, because it was very, very young growth, that it just had not even really reached any kind of mature potential. And I treated him like this. He actually stayed. He stayed in something like this until the growth was hardened off. He had quite a bit of roots by the time that he got put into this pot. And he's growing pretty good now. I think this plant is... I got that little cutting on 6/15/2018. So this plant is pretty much 2 years old. Hopefully it blooms someday. He was a pretty important plant. This is not a surefire thing. This does not work 100% of the time. You're gonna lose some, and you're gonna have a few miracles every now and again. Thanks for watching, and happy cacti growing.